Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson, spiritual therapist. And today, before I get started and introduce my lovely guest that a lot of you will know, I want to give you a warning. This could be very triggering, the subjects that we're going to discuss today. And I want you to be aware of that. We're going to be discussing transgender, hermaphrodite, stroke intersex, as they're now called, gender dysmorphia, gender dysphoria, and other subjects. We do not have the answers, but we as therapists would like to discuss some of the people that we've been working with over the years, some of the interactions and information that we have. And so just letting you know, if this subject is not for you, do not comment or put Jesus in the Bible. Just move along, okay? Because no one's got time for your cruelty and your meanness and your snidey, horrible comments. Move along so that people that actually need love and care and understanding, so that people that may not know anything about these subjects can get some insight to them. All right, so if you're here with a loving heart, I welcome you to stay. And if you're not, pop along. Bye-bye. Now, the lady in the screen is a very long-term qualified past life regressionist, therapist, and friend. And her name is Andrea Foulkes. Andrea, hello, darling.
Hello, Dani. And yeah, Aladdin and inner child healing, ancestral timeline healing, spirit releasement for 22 years. And yeah, and people can see some of those regressions that I used to do on TV back in the day, on This Morning, and another show called Have I Been Here Before? So I just say that to preempt this. And I have talked about this subject before on a TV show, gosh, it must be 15 years ago, called Britasia. But it is also a subject that for some reason, I don't know why, I have been fascinated with the human condition ever since I got to this planet. I think, I look back and I can remember the day and my mum and me saying to my mum, can we go to the library? I've ordered some books. She was like, oh, what books have you ordered? And I was like, books on people who were men and then became women. And, I think she was like, oh my goodness, because this was, back in the 1980s. But I think I read a book in the school library on people who are born, I think now we call it intersex, born with both genitalia, male and female. And it just absolutely, fascinated me at school. So I was quite forthright and I ordered some books from the library so I could investigate this further. And I think I came across a lady who used to be a Bond girl, and I suppose this is a good way for us to open this, that, a lot of women you've admired in films, and, I have a background of being a model when I was younger and thinner. And the thing is, though, there's a difference between coveting the body of somebody who is a woman and born a woman, and coveting the body of somebody who genetically it's impossible to look like them because they weren't actually born a woman, but they have transgendered into being a woman, and an exceptionally beautiful woman at that. And some of them have found themselves as models and as Bond girls, as in Tula Kossi wrote a book, and she was called Caroline Kossi, and she became probably the most well-known Bond girl. But also when I was younger, I had a friend whose boyfriend's sister was actually a transgender, male to female, and she kept tampons in her bathroom to create the illusion of being, a woman. And yet, she doesn't have periods, but to the men she was dating, she wanted to create this illusion. Now, I'm sure there's, very different mental aspects of why this happens. And from my experience in regressing people, this is what I want to share in what I found in regression. And also to just plant that seed that in normal psychology of what a person who thinks they're in the wrong body, whether that's male to female, female to male, has to go through a psychological analysis before they are considered for either hormone replacement or actual gender change. but it's happening younger and younger and younger now. And I think that's what we're going to discuss. And also giving from my spiritual perspective and perhaps Dani's spiritual perspective, another option to consider and to investigate that in the mainstream, nobody talks about what we're going to talk about today. And it's not to say whether it's right or wrong, it's just to give you another option to consider.
Yeah, beautifully put. Give you another option to consider. Now, you mentioned the word intersex, and we obviously want to help people who have never heard that word understand that the word before that used to be hermaphrodite. We're all being purposefully socially engineered into certain areas that the overseers of our planet, my planet, your planet, our planet, are trying to force on us, all of us. No one is not without being touched or tampered with by the non-leadership at the top. So there's the new word is intersex, and it is somebody who was born with a feminine reproductive system potentially, or parts of it, and some kind of a penis. I, the other day, was watching a documentary on a lovely man. He was so gorgeous, African, American, mixed race. No, he wasn't American, he's English, I think, British, African. He was so beautiful in his delivery of what happened to him. So he was born with a vagina hole and a very long clitoris, which was really a penis. He, after many years of, considering himself, decided to pick a side, if you will. Don't be offended. You know, we're not going to be perfect in our delivery, but we're doing the best we can with this very delicate subject that is it's a hot button for a lot of people. Most of those people are judges, not really going through what we're talking about, because those are the people that really need the love and the care and the support. But he basically had massive chunk of skin taken from his forearm here and attached to the clitoris that was extraordinarily long to create more of a penis for him to be able to, have a sexual, have sexual relations. And a lot of people, like this guy said, he goes, why is it that when someone says, I used to be a man, now I'm a woman, or vice versa, why do we always wonder about their vagina or their penis? It's like, it's just unkind. If you really consider it, it's just kind of unkind. That they're doing the best they can. They've gone through so much to get where they're at. Now, I do want to talk about a person that I did invite to be part of this discussion. And it's such a delicate discussion. Nobody wants to then be out there in public and be recognized and then take abuse. But so I admire you, my love. I'm going to call this man John. That's not his name, nowhere near his name. But when John met Sally, John was a woman. And so Sally and John had a long-term relationship and were married. And John, let's say at the time his name was Jane. Jane was this real big, butch, fun-loving, hug you, give you a noogie. She was a really masculine lesbian woman. She was a party in a box. She was all that and a bag of chips. And her wife, Sally, loved her so much. But Sally was like, hey, you're so masculine, Jane. Why don't you become John? And also it wasn't just Sally's suggestion, anyway, so she became a man now called John. And the reason I met them like 6-7 years ago. They hired me to be their clinical therapist because they were going through some marriage issues and some of this gender upset was occurring. There was a lot of some resent, that needed to be kind of ironed out and responsibility apportioned. Anyway, so that's how I met them, and it was an honor to work with them. Lovely, lovely people. And I was so stunned with John when he was telling me what he'd gone through to change physically from becoming a woman into becoming a man. And I said, I wish for you that you would speak, vlog, blog, video, so that parents can understand, people can understand. This is no picnic. It is a very difficult journey. So, and the suicide rate in this area of humanity is so high. People are killing themselves because they're so upset with being what they feel is the wrong body, or not feeling this way or that way. It's so many different things. And so John explained to me that every day he had to and has to inject his body with hormones, suppressing the female hormones and injecting masculine male hormones to allow the, you know, the hair to grow and the testosterone to pump, etc. And it is agony, and the confusion in the brain, the trauma that these people, these beautiful people, are going through. You know, it needs more love, more care, more light. So I'm going to bring this part to a close, and Andrea, hand to you.
Yeah, I have a client who they're ex-military and they have transitioned from a man to a female. And I'm also very careful when people who are post-transgender operation come to see me as a client, and I will explain why I'm very careful in where I will take them. Now, that client, just interesting, adding on to what you said, he has to, well, she now has to just rub a cream on, and that is enough. This cream is enough of the hormone to keep her creating the right hormones to be in a, you know, to express herself as a feminine, and a very beautiful lady she is at that. However, she has got issues with the operation that took place because she's had the actual gender realignment. So it's not like she was born with both genders. Because I actually believe, just covering that subject as well, I believe that if you are born with both genders, it is not for your parent or a doctor to decide what gender you should be as a little baby. And as far as I'm aware, and anybody can correct us if we're wrong, but there is, I wrote this down, there is, I think it is, hold on, let me a second, I've got it written on here. It's 1 in 83,000 people is born with both genders. So why should a parent or a doctor say, decide now? Because that body isn't displaying itself as male or female at that point. You're just asking a parent to decide. And then this parent has to decide. What if you don't ever have to decide, unless when you become the adult, you yourself decide, I don't want to have both of these genders? Then that's a choice you as an adult make about your own body. So maybe we should just accept that 1 in 83,000 people are born intersex, hermaphrodite, and we should have 3 genders on the planet, not just 2. You know, that's another seed to plant. What if some of the people who are actually transgender, their parents didn't tell them the truth, and they did an operation when they were born and haven't told them that they were born with both genders? What if that has also happened and that was kept a secret from them? So that can happen as well, because I've had people talk about that with me. So as a therapist, we hear everything, and we're here to try and help people emotionally understand what's happened to them. So my belief is that some of the people are, you know, when they go for the psychological analysis, nobody's saying, have you ever considered the fact that you might have been an opposite gender in a past life, and that you may have predominantly been this opposite gender, and now this might be one of your first or second incarnations being the gender that you are now? And it's going to take some adjustment. It's going to take some getting used to. You know, the divine source does not make mistakes in general. It's given you this gender so that you can work through the experience of what it is like to be in this body, even if being in this body feels very, very difficult to come to terms with the body that you're in. What if you were allowed to be regressed back through past life regression and heal that past life, so that you come into alignment to understand, yes, this might be the first lifetime that you're this opposite gender, and it does feel quite challenging and difficult. That's one option. What if it's not just that? What if there's some trauma happened in the womb, which happened with another client that I had? I spoke with him and his mum, and I was thinking it was just the trauma in the womb, because there was trauma in the womb that I helped him heal, and his mother healed the psychological impact of that. But also going into the really wooey aspect of it, it was linked to him coming as a soul from another planet where they don't actually have a gender. So this was his first experience of having a gender. And where he comes from, that other planet, is androgynous. So it wasn't even like he had a past life where he'd been an opposite gender. He'd come from an androgynous planet. And it felt strange actually being in a gender. And then he felt like he was in the wrong gender because of the trauma in the womb. So then you've got some other people that have had trauma in childhood and been bullied by what they looked like in childhood. And then they've subconsciously decided before the age of 7, oh, this is the wrong gender. You know, so maybe if there was inner child healing, which how I work is very different than how a regular psychologist would work. I always say my work starts where regular psychology ends. And so it's
sorry, mate. Sorry to interrupt you there. Everything you're saying is so important. It's just so important. And I just wanted to pull back for 1 second before you continue. So hold that thought. You mentioned, and it's so important that you mentioned past lives. Now, there are people who are brainwashed, programmed, especially with a religious doctrine, who the moment you say past lives are like, when you say planets, when you say aliens, when you say that, I am so sorry for you, mate. I am so sorry for you that you are not allowed, that you cannot allow yourself to just relax and listen to another thought form or other ideas, that you are so disciplined, you are so controlled, that you have no ability to have a free thought for yourself, that just perhaps people have had past lives. And if you don't believe in past lives, everyone on the planet and whatever cult, religion, we're all told when you die, your soul leaves your body. Where do you think it goes? Where do you think it came from? If you can believe in a Jesus, if you can believe in angels, you can't open your mind to other beautiful, benevolent beings. I'll just leave that there. I just didn't want us to go down another road without, because you know, this subject is so delicate. You know,
well, yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is when I was doing the past life regressions on ITV back in the day, to be honest with you, there were very few people who were anti past lives. It was really fascinating that there wasn't that level of negativity at all. It was like all the emails I were getting, and I would get, when I was on air, I'd get back 1,000 emails that day of the airing. So this was back in 2004 to 2007, was showing that given permission by mainstream terrestrial TV, which was unusual at the time, but to be given permission to talk about things like past lives, most people had some experiences that they couldn't place. And they were really open to this. So I think, you know, although there are probably some people who goes against their, you know, spiritual, religious beliefs or whatever, it's like what we're talking about in this specific subject is giving somebody an option to consider and honoring the fact that that person feels, you know, and having worked with people who, you know, feel like they are in the wrong body, you know, it must be an awful psychological situation to be in. And if there is an answer that means that something you could do through regression without any pharmaceutical drugs, without being cut open, could allow you to come into alignment mentally and go, oh my God, this allows me to understand why I'm in this body, and that although it might be challenging, I can work through this, I can release this emotional trauma and be happy in this body. Because, you know, from what you're saying, Dani, and from what we've seen and the research that I've come across, it is very challenging to have these operations. And there are people who've gone from one gender to the other, back again, and then gone back again. I've seen some interviews with people that's gone through, and I think it might be more challenging in one gender than the other to transfer back into. And it isn't the answer. You know, the answer is ultimately to come into alignment with the body that you've been given. But we honor people who are in an adult body and go, you know what, I've considered everything and I still think that I need to do this operation. It feels like the right thing for me. But that's not where we're at now in 2022. We're at a point when, you know, a parent is saying, my child's 4 or 5 years of age, and I think they're in the wrong body. Nobody can really know that, but we seem to be in a society where we're being pushed psychologically to change a child's gender at a very, very early formative age, before that child has emotionally developed to know whether it's being affected by cartoons, by environmental factors, by estrogen from the fact that many women take the morning after pill, or they take the other one, oh, what's it called? The one where you take it just to stop you getting pregnant. What's it called?
The pill.
The pill, that's it. It's so simple. It's actually the pill. But what if, because those tablets are going into the water stream, you know, and not every, you know, in certain countries and cultures, you know, everybody's drinking, I'm not drinking tap water, but a lot of people are drinking tap water that might not be filtered properly. They may be being overdosed by all these chemicals. That's another contributing
Oh my God,
factor.
this is just like, yeah, this is crazy town. The things and the ways that we can be so affected. And yeah. I want to go back on a couple of things you said. You mentioned the Bond girls, some of the Bond girls. So we're not necessarily talking about the lead, you know, the lead. So I want to go back to the woman that you mentioned, because another girl that I read about was an extra in the Bond films, not a main Bond girl. But wouldn't it be so amazing to imagine that James Bond 007, who we've all been so like, he's so shaggable, he's so sexy, you know, he always beds a beautiful woman, and often the older films would be him in bed with a woman at the end. So were you specifically saying that there was a number of Bond girls who were the Bond girl at the end of the movie?
No, they weren't the one that you would know as this is the famous Bond girl from this film. I think quite a lot of models that are used within the Bond films to be these beautiful, very beautiful, glamorous women. And they, you know, some of them, and in the modeling arena, you know, we've looked at these women and we've been like, oh my God, look at that body. How did she get that? You are comparing yourself to somebody who is not physically born a woman. So you cannot compare yourself to that. It's impossible to have those dynamics of your body structure and be born a woman. It doesn't happen from being a woman. It happens from being a man who is been transgendered into a woman. Yeah. So you are idealizing unrealistic proportions. Yes. And so we've had our minds kind of mess with whether it's male to female, female to male. Yeah. You know, I've met someone who I was just surprised later when I realized that they'd actually been a woman and had transgendered to a male, and they were a very good looking male. You know, I would not have known that they used to be a woman. You know, initially I would not have known that. But my concern is that we're doing this to children at a very, very young age now, and we're normalizing it. We're going into a society where it's being normalized. And I think these are big decisions that parents are being coerced to make with a child, you know, at a very, very young age. And we all know that, you know, children can be tomboys and work through this. And what if this whole tomboy thing is actually a past life legacy that you're just working through and coming into alignment with being in this body,
or that you are just a bloody tomboy. You're just that, you know. For God's sake, these people are ridiculous. You know, the helicopter parents. oh, I need to give my child, you know, I'm sorry, I'm sick of it, I'm tired of it, it needs to be spoken about. There are parents whose parents were dreadful to them, messed them up, beat the shit out of them, hit them too much. And so then when they have their kids, they're like, I will never do that. Good for you. Great. Thank you. Please do not beat your kids up, because you know how much it screws you up. But your child doesn't necessarily have the full understanding that they are going to maybe live to regret. So remember, all of us, our friends at certain ages, 13, 14, 15, they're the most important people to us. There's a group of girls that I've been working with. Two of them, one of them's changed her name, won't allow the mother to call her by her name. She's only allowed to call by a certain name. Let's say Johnny. It's not Johnny. And you have to say them, they, you know, because the child is all offended and can't cope with being put into a box. It has got to an extent that there is an anxiety, a social anxiety that we are feeling around not saying the wrong thing. It is getting to a point of ludicrous proportions, chronic hysteria, chronic anxiety, and not fair on anyone. It's just not fair on anyone. Who's doing that? Who is instilling these gender appropriate, gender assigned labels? You know, we got to pull back and look at the whole world as many separations, divisions, despair. You know, I'm so concerned for one of these girls that really believes she's a boy, and she's very influential in her group. Now there's another one that thinks she too might be a boy. How is that possible? That all these children so close together are suddenly now thinking, maybe I'm a boy. It is being done. They are being targeted. And you cannot tell a kid, when they've got their mates, their friends, they don't give a shit about what mum or dad says, or teachers, or they're just the adults. They're boring, they're old fashioned, they don't know what they're saying. So we have to be so careful with all of this. And you mentioned, you know, parents making a decision to choose a sex for their kid that might be born with, you know, both sets of genitalia. And you know, you're right, but the sad thing is the parents will be like, I could imagine, you know, I could only imagine, of course, like most of you could only imagine, because we haven't had to go through this horror, that, well, that child's got to grow up, that child's got to have friends and go to school, etc. You know, the parents may be thinking, well, I want to protect my child, I want to protect my little one, I want them to have a normal life. You know, it's a very difficult subject, every which way you look at it. My concern is the social engineering from the idiots that run our planet. Yes, that's a major, major issue. The dirty, filthy sexual books that they've been putting into your schools, guys, during this whole curtain shutting up thing. You can't even believe the books, the filthy, dirty, sexualizing books that they're trying to sexualize your babies. That is another subject. Let's try and stick with the one we're on.
Yeah, and also I think, you know, we've seen a lot of people, I think there was a swimming event where, I think it was the Olympics, wasn't it? How can you be then allowed to compete in a sport with either men, alongside men, or alongside women, when of course you're going to win because you've got more strength and energy. That's why they have female races and male races, because you're not equal in your energy, you know, and strength to compete against each other. So it isn't a fair, it's not a level playing field. You know, if you're going to have a sport, have it where you say, okay, all these people can compete together because they're all transgenders, so they should be able to compete together. Then it's a fair playing field. Mm-hmm. But to try and put you in a category where you have to then be male or female, instead of having this other category, you know, which I keep going back to, I would love that we could do inner journey work with people where they would consider, you know, hey, just come and see if going inside yourself and seeing if this is a legacy from some trauma from childhood, past life, whether it's even an entity, you know, those those of you who've seen other videos where I talk, and I've talked with you and Elena on entities attaching to people, you know, what if you've got a combination of a past life overlay, a trauma from childhood, an entity attached? Of course you're going to feel like you're in the wrong gender if these voices in your head are telling you all kinds of things. So if we created a society where this was normalized, where you would psychologically explore this before you were given, you know, chemical tablets to take and operations to have, this would be a better answer. Because, you know, it's once you've made those decisions, you cannot really reverse it that easily. And the psychological impact for people is, I think they think it's going to be the answer. And I think, like you said, psychologically, I think for a lot of them, it isn't the answer. It isn't the utopia they thought it was going to be. There might be a tiny percentage of people, and we're not transgender, we don't know about that, but I'm pretty sure they might say, no, this was the answer for me. And we're not arguing with you. We're just giving a voice to the people who perhaps are too shy to have a voice, and also don't know or even thought that perhaps this could be another option of why psychologically do I feel like I'm in the wrong body.
Mm-hmm. You know, again, it's such a subject, like this thing about the athletic, the swimmer that transgendered to a woman who still has very much is masculine. So if you get a child young enough and you apply the puberty blockers that prevent them from, let's say it's a boy. So this beautiful boy, there's a video, a documentary. Oh God, it's just so, he is just the sweetest looking, angelic, gentle, sweet being. You know, you hear him talking, oh my God. And it was so difficult. His mom, an educated woman, she was giving him her estrogen tablets. And you think, what the fuck is wrong with you, woman? Why would you do that to your child? You know, he wasn't old enough to make the decision, and she'd be like, well, I've been sleeping on the floor in his bedroom for years so that he doesn't kill himself. Like, it's so easy for us to judge. It's so difficult for people in this, you know, well, oh, you know, smoking off fag, and oh yeah, that blah, 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 down the pub, you know, Bill and Barry having a chat, laughing at, you know, it's not funny. None of it's funny. It all needs loving, tender care. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, the boy athlete, the swimmer, you know, I think it's very unfair. I think personally, you know, and don't be offended. If you get triggered, that's you. It's I don't mean to be offensive. I'm allowed my point of view. I'm allowed my voice, just like you are. You know, so if you disagree, you don't have to comment, just move along. But I don't think that witnessing, and that poor lovely girl now, you know, not, I mean, you know, what was attacked was that must have been hard for her, coming from a him to a her. But I think it's grossly unfair. You know, a female that was a male, is largely never going to physically be able to fairly compete. You're always going to have more power. But then you take a boy who's running on an 8-cylinder, you know, mindset, and you apply the estrogen, the puberty blockers, their bones fuse, their features change and soften. You know, the changes are incredible. Then they're down to a 4-cylinder, but they're still genetically, anatomically, biologically, physically, probably going to be still vastly superior in strength and speed to a girl.
And I think the other thing that I read about intersex, which it was fascinating, was if you have a womb and you're born with both genders and those genders have not been, you know, made to make a choice of be one or the other, you can actually conceive your own baby by yourself, which is even more, you know, but maybe that's maybe a natural thing that could happen. And I think it happens in snakes. I think snakes can have both. I think I'm right in saying snakes can have both genders. So there's that aspect of it. And then we could sort of diversify in another thing, which is called parthenogenesis. That I think that's it with snakes. Snakes can conceive from their own egg, and 1% of humans are conceived through parthenogenesis, which is where you conceive your own you seed your own egg. I might be using the wrong vocabulary, but that means you predominantly would birth a female child as well. So I think all these things come within this umbrella. That's why I'm mentioning them, because I think they all come within this umbrella of subjects that people don't really understand
or think about
or know about.
Well, what about?
And I think that's where the
twins?
concept. Oh, sorry, go on.
What about twins? I know there's so much to say and share. What about twins? You know, it has been proven countless times that sometimes when there are twins in the womb, that one twin will literally absorb another twin. It has happened, it happens. You know, again, another little layer to, you know, to add to what you're sharing right now.
Yeah, and I have, oh, here's a great, I think I might have told you this twin story, but I had a client who said to me, there's something weird about my birth that I need to understand about my time in the womb. What do you pick up? So I said to her, oh, it's really weird. I see that you were a twin. You were meant to be born a twin, but somehow you weren't born a twin, but that soul that was meant to be your brother or sister went somewhere else and was born to somebody else within your family dynamic at exactly the same time that your mum gave birth to you. So was there someone else within your family who had a baby? And now she's crying. She's going, oh my God, my dad got 2 women pregnant at the same time. And I said, well, that's where your twin that was initially in the womb with you and your mum went to this other lady and was born at roughly the same time as you. So, you know, when we go into the more esoteric aspects of life, then we can have a broader spectrum of understanding, you know, what is going on, because it's beyond the realms of the 3D matrix of what you've been told. But when you start to look at all of this in a more esoteric soul perspective, then you can start to understand everything.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's going to be people out there watching this, looking at you and I saying, what do you know? What do you blonde birds know? You know,
well, we don't care.
Well, again, I understand that. I do understand that. Somebody who's really having to go through the struggles, the mental torture, the torment, the miserable life, they're feeling this about themselves and then looking at us just, you know, sitting here and discussing. But you and I have seen so much. You and I have worked with so many patients and clients over the years who are going through this trauma, this torment, this pain, this harm, this hurt. And that's why we are stepping and we are bravely discussing from our own experiences of these beautiful people that have come to us for care, for love, for some kind of understanding. So again, as we go into a more esoteric consideration, there are little kids who are so confused, and a lot of it is influence. And I'm going to tell a quick story about another person, a lesbian woman. And I don't even know if the word lesbian's used. And, you know, because some do, some don't, gay. It's like, we've got to stop worrying about treading. Don't say lesbian. That's really whatever stop. It's just crazy. It's just so crazy that no conversations will happen. Now I've completely forgotten what I was going to say.
Well, the other thing is, I was regressing a client once, a female client, and she was trying to look at how she knew this guy, you know, like she got this big connection with this guy, and where does she know him from? And she went into this past life, and I was shocked. She was really not a very nice lady in a past life. She was running some ancient temple, and she was having eunuchs, which is men who'd been castrated, having their genitalia taken away from them so they would be eunuchs. And she was having the eunuchs do this to the new men that were born into this sort of priestess environment. And so, you know, because we've had history distorted, in general, you don't read so much about this in the history books, but this happened, and this is what happened. And this is what happened when, you know, we haven't just had an abuse of the patriarchy, we've had an abuse of the matriarchy. The matriarchy abused its time on the planet as well. So there's this woman, you know, wielding her power, telling, you know, these other, you know, men to castrate these other men. In the end, it turned out that the guy she knew in this lifetime was actually the only man who was her lover in that lifetime, and the other eunuchs all ganged up and said, you've got to kill her and get rid of her because what she's doing to us all is so terrible. And I was saying, well, where are these babies coming from? And she said, well, the priestesses who were working like as oracles are not really meant to get married, they're not meant to have children, but some of them were having children, and if they were born as female, we were turning them into priestesses, but if they were born male, we were turning them almost to being our slaves and castrating them, which was a dreadful thing to do, but this was what was going on in these past lives. So, you know, you've got a residue of that perhaps in people's consciousness as well.
Definitely. I remember what I was going to say, but some little children being so confused. They just want to be a mermaid. They would rather be a mermaid, so they don't have to have this worry and fright and confusion and pain and just not think about their private parts, bless them. Now, we have many legends and many stories, and a lot of people in the main know about Atlantis. Now, in Atlantis, one of the things that, you know, people aren't aware of maybe is the horrific amount of experiments that were happening, that have been happening on this planet, that still happen on this planet. Think Mengele, you know, the evil people who still do DNA switching. They're putting fish DNA with human DNA and monkey DNA and dog. It has been happening. It is one of the reasons why all these systems are collapsing on the planet right now, and we're all on one timeline. And so again, there's all this happening because it's happened before. History has repeated itself, you know, in some regard, in that way. And that's something else to kind of add into all of this. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. So please continue.
Oh yeah, let me think of what, talking about the children who are mermaids, that there are documents, and I watched a really tragic documentary about a young girl whose legs were actually fused together and like her feet were out, and she was born without the ability to go to the bathroom, basically, because there was no room for that. But it was like, you know, why would she be born like that? There were all kinds of interesting things that humans are very quick to decide, like we need to operate on them, you know, like, but we don't consider perhaps this person's meant to live in water. Maybe this is an overlay from some other time. There were all kinds of things, and they called her the mermaid baby. And I think there is, again, a tiny percentage of people who are born like this. And so that, like you said, there's a lot of genetic modifications happened. A lot of the truth of humanity has been hidden from us. You know, all these things that we're discussing now and other things that, you know, Dani's interviewed people discussing, is because our true history and the truth of ourselves has been hidden from us by a group of people who've sort of wielded their power and control over us to suppress our true nature of how multidimensional we are, how powerful we are, how we have the ability to self-heal ourselves. And we've been kept in this limited bandwidth of reality, which doesn't allow us to access our true healing potential. Like, you know, one of my clients that came to see me once, and I have talked about this, he was male and he came to see me saying, you know, I've got these pains in my stomach. You know, he'd been down the allopathic medicine route. They said, we don't know why you have these pains in your stomach, can't help you, go away, you know. And in a way, that was lucky that they said to him, go away, because they could have started to operate, you know, which does happen for some people. It isn't the solution. So he came to see me. I started to regress him back to the origin of the pains in his stomach. He went back to being in the 1920s, being a female prostitute. He got pregnant. He had a miscarriage. He never healed the emotional trauma of the miscarriage, and there was a physical trauma in his body from the miscarriage. And so when he got to the same age in this lifetime, which was being 30 years of age, that triggered the cell memory of the past life to reenact itself in his physical body, and that's when the pain started. So when I regressed him and psychologically said, you're not a female in this lifetime, you're not, you know, giving birth and losing a baby and having a miscarriage, that's not happening, you're male in this lifetime, you know, literally within a 2-hour session, he walks out of there with no pain in his body anymore. The end, that's it. You know, so I know the power of the work that we do by going emotionally inside ourselves and helping people heal this. You know, I've seen a lady show up with her neck like that and leave my session with her neck like this because she had a load of entities attached who'd been hung in past lives. You know, so when you are allowing yourself to consider really deep subjects, and is there a solution, something I've not considered yet, that is going to save me from a lot of long-term mental health issues or physical issues or actual, you know, cutting and changing my body in a way that I might change my mind about years down the line. Perhaps we should explore these harmless explorations of the subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind is running 97% of your reality.
Yeah, it's again, a very long subject with so many roads to it, so many avenues to it, and so many ways that we could go. And in trying to, you know, be delicate, but raise things in people's minds for them to consider that people aren't talking about out there. And, you know, we're inviting you to, you know, to discern for yourself, to think about these things. And, you know, the biggest thing I find is the way that we've all been programmed and brainwashed and taught to not go inside, to not trust this, to not look at ourselves and say, do you know what, I'm just going to love me. I'm going to look at who I am in this moment, and I'm going to say, you done good, girl, or you done good, guy, or you done good, whatever you're calling yourself at this moment in time. And looking in the mirror, going right up to the mirror, looking into your pupils. When you look around the pupils, I call them the flowers. There are these beautiful colors around your pupils. Get close and look into your eye pupil and the flowers and say hello to you. Say hi there, hi. And then one woman, she wrote, because I share this technique a lot, because it's a quick way of you out there getting connected back into you, your soul, your heart, your harmony. This woman wrote, Dani, I tried to get to the mirror, but I can't stop laughing. Yes, good. Whatever comes up, some people cry, some people get angry, some people are hateful, some people just fall apart. Whatever it is, it's a beautiful way for you to access back into yourself. When we're all being tried to, our souls are being owned, where our spirits are being owned, we're pushed away from our magical, beautiful, hierarchical, incredible, royal selves. We, humanity, we are royalty, we are beautiful. 22 strands of DNA, we are very, very, very beautiful. Okay, darling, do you think that there's more that we should add here? Or do you think that that is kind of a...
I think for now, you know, we're just planting that seed for people. You know, maybe people have bigger questions, you know, maybe it is a great platform, you know, maybe we've made some people angry, and maybe rightly so that they might be angry. You know, maybe there's people who we're going to help by opening this conversation up, but you know, that's our divine intention, that we open up the conversation to people who perhaps have way more knowledge and experience from having been in a body where they feel they're in the wrong gender. We haven't, neither Dani and I have had that experience. We can only speak from a therapist point of view of regressing people and helping people resolve their emotional states of mind to make them happy in the body that they've been given, or to make them feel absolutely clear in the choice they've made. But one thing I'm very clear about is that I don't explore certain areas if you're post-transgender and you've taken hormone replacement tablets and therapy. I do not go into certain areas. You may come to see me because you want to clear some psychological issues up. You might want to explore a past life, but I'm not going to go anywhere where it goes near gender, because once you've made a decision and you've made that big medical decision, I don't want anything psychologically to change that decision you've made. The people I'm talking about are people who have not taken any pharmaceutical drugs to change their gender. They haven't had an operation. And if in their mind they were like, you know what, if there is some way that I could resolve my mind, because it is an issue of the mind, to be happy in this body that Source has given me, let me explore that. That's my little statement of what I would like to say. So I think now that's the best I can say.
Definitely. And guys out there watching this, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for just, spending time with us to hear, what a lot of us are discussing or not discussing out there. I did invite a beautiful transgender man today, who used to be a woman, as I mentioned, and he was not able to be here for whatever reason. And because it's not easy. It's not easy. And maybe there's still part of him that people don't know, that he was a woman before, there's all of that continued on the psychological, anatomical, biological, psyche of all of us. I mean, it would have been really nice to have someone like, I guess someone like Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn, to have understanding of, what the person goes through when they do shift and make a change and become physically looking more how they've always felt. That would have been lovely. Some of these people are very
but also
to connect
I
with.
would say it's probably very different, a man transitioning when he's already had children, like he's had a life as a male and he's had children. I suppose it's very different if you were a woman and you transitioned to a man and you did that when you were a teenager, and now you can't reverse it to go back to want to be a woman and have children, and you can't necessarily have children as the male now that you are. So I think it's, if we were to interview more people, I suppose they would be at differing points in their life and having made differing decisions, and some of the people that I've spoken to, they're very sad now because some of their family won't speak to them. Their children are cross with them because of the decisions that they made. So it's a very complex subject. So it's just like trying to find this divine place of grace, peace, and understanding for humanity. And why is this topic becoming so big in 2022? Why is this such a huge topic now? Why does it appear to be statistically, more than ever, more children at a younger age than ever are being considered for gender reassignment? Why is that happening now on the planet? So I suppose that's the question we're putting out there, isn't it?
Definitely. And again, it can't be answered in one go. And, because of the controllers. Do you remember Thomas the Tank Engine? Okay, so in Britain, and again, this is where things just get so friggin' ridiculous. Growing up with Thomas the Tank Engine in the UK, the train guy, the guard, or he was called the Fat Controller. And he was called the Fat Controller because he was fat. He was a big, round, jolly man. And there never used to be anything wrong with that. You know what I mean? But now I forget what it's called, something else in America. And I remember learning, I'm like, who's that? Like, I forget the name. I don't know why I just thought, but there's so much of this social engineering that's happening. Oh, you fat shaming, oh, you this, you that, you gender shaming, you just can't win. And like I say, it's important for people who are just coming into understanding that you yourself, you don't deserve to be so stressed out by all of this either. You don't deserve to be forcibly put under more despair than you're already going through, more anxiety in case you say the wrong thing and you offend someone. I forget, I watched Trevor Noah. I saw a little clip yesterday. He was talking about a singer called Lizzo, and I don't know her or him. And I've never seen them, but it was interesting because the point he made was in this person, oh, it was a she, in Lizzo's song, she used the word spaz, right? And she's American or Canadian. You and I at school, the word spaz meant you spastic, you spasticated idiot, and making fun of kids in their, with spasticated legs or whatever. So growing up, we came to learn in the UK, spaz is a really unkind word. And we would say, you monged, oh, you mong, M-O-N-G. That comes from the word mongoloid, which has now been changed to Down syndrome, and so again, very cruel, not very kind. But when you're a kid, you don't know, but oh my God, the programs stay there your whole life. So this Lizzo, somebody wrote and said, listen, I'm not sure whether you knew this, but spaz is a really not nice word. And this woman went and changed the word. I mean, how big of her to do that? And then all these bloody moaning minis, they get on board. Oh, how could you? Even though you changed the name. It's like, shut up and get a life. Like, seriously, you miserable prat. You know, all this attacking, that mum in your mum's basement, like, oh yeah, oh no, stop it, get in front of that mirror, say hi to yourself, get back into loving you, and stop projecting your anger, your rage, your misery onto others, because the whole world right now is in some kind of recovery. I just want to say, the whole world right now, in my opinion, is in some kind of recovery, Andrea, some kind of recovery.
It's like a therapy center of planet Earth. And, you know, when you're going through the process of awakening, you know, initially I think people are numb, then they're angry, then they're rageful outside of themselves, you know, finding fault with other people, and then eventually, you know, which is this spiritual process, you start to go inside yourself, and you have to be okay with these uncomfortable feelings. Like, even a friend of mine this week, you know, she's new to therapy, she's never done any therapy, even though I'm a therapist, she hasn't done any therapy. But I told her to read certain books, and she read those books. One of them being, which I highly recommend, is one called Toxic Parents by Susan Forward. And she said, oh, I read that book, it was amazing. She came off her antidepressants, and then by her own volition, she chose that herself. And then emotion was too much, because, you know, she'd spent X amount of years repressing her emotional self, and now all these emotions were coming to the surface, and she didn't have the capacity to know how to process those, and she started to feel depressed again, so she went back on her antidepressants. So unless, you know, reading a book is only kind of setting the intention for your journey, it's a long journey doing emotional inner journey work. You know, you have to be triggered into wanting to go inside yourself. You have to be actively doing this inner work on yourself. You have to be doing it every day. You know, if you take yourself off medication without having a substitute to go inside, whether that's meditation or seeking therapy with a therapist, it's going to be challenging, because all these emotions that have been repressed are going to come to the surface, and it's not easy. You know, I think people don't realize how this self-development spiritual path is. You know, people spend, myself included, you know, spent a lot of time laying on the floor sobbing and wailing, and it's a lot easier when you live on your own to have the time, and let's call it the luxury, of going inside yourself and processing your emotional self. It's a lot harder when emotions coming up and you've got to go and make tea for children. You can't go, oh, mummy needs to just lay on the floor and process the stuff for 4 hours. You know, it's not always, you know, convenient to do that. So you have to make allowances mentally and emotionally and psychologically for this process of what it is. And there isn't a walk in the park, and there may be points in your life where it's easier for you to process things, and it might be times when it's more challenging, and having the discernment of self to know that, whether these are things around gender, because you see a lot of people saying, well, I think Bruce Jenner is probably a good example, isn't he? It's like, I knew when I was younger, but, you know,
don't upset the masses now.
Sorry. It wasn't convenient before. I was busy being this amazing sports person, and then I got remarried, and then I was busy being this parent, and there wasn't the time. And it's, you know, it's always, what do you choose? You know, what do you choose at this point in your life to be your priority? You know, whatever you choose, that then becomes your priority, and you have to have empathy and compassion and understanding for yourself. If the choices that you've made in your life mean you don't have as much time as you would like to deal with certain other aspects emotionally in your life, because you've got too many, you know, balls you're juggling, and you need to prioritize what is your main focus. But I think focusing on your psychological well-being is always the winner.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to end today, my friend, Andrea
Thank you,
Foulkes.
Dani.
Thank you so much for being there. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. And you and I have plans to continue bringing, delicate subjects, but tools and help for the beautiful beloveds out there, along with our beautiful friend, Ginny Jablonski also. Anything final you would like to say to the people that will watch this?
No, I've got lots of free videos on my YouTube channel, Andrea Foulkes Pastlife Regression. I've got free meditations on my website, andreafoulkes.com. Yeah, and I post merrily away on Facebook predominantly.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you, Dani.
Oh, my pleasure, darling. And to you guys out there, be kind to you, be loving to you, and a lot of us have suffered a lot of abuse, verbal abuse, emotional and physical. And at this time we're in now, where there is a mass global recovery of different things, just be kind to you, just take care of you, self-soothe you. And I send you my love, and I will see you soon.
Much love.